All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the literal blueprint of, well, you. We're decoding genetics and looking at the fascinating rules that determine exactly how physical traits are passed down through families. It's this incredibly structured biological system, and honestly, once you understand these foundational rules, everything about how you look is going to start making perfect sense. I mean, think about it for a second. Have you ever looked in the mirror and thought, why on earth do I have my mom's dimples but my dad's super straight hair? Or maybe you share a very specific nose shape with your brother, but you have a completely different hairline. It's what I like to call the family resemblance mystery. What we're really talking about here is heredity, the biological process of passing down physical features and genetic tendencies from one generation to the next. So how exactly does this work? Well, it all comes down to alleles. Simply put, an allele is one of two versions of a gene that you get from each parent. I absolutely love using the instruction manual analogy for this. Think of it like this. You receive one complete, incredibly detailed instruction manual from mom and one complete manual from dad. Together, these two manuals sit side by side inside your cells, holding the exact instructions needed to build the physical version of you.
But here's where it gets interesting. What happens if mom's instruction manual says one thing, let's say curly hair, and dad's manual says something completely different, like straight hair? This brings us to the whole concept of dominant versus recessive traits. I like to picture this as megaphones and whispers. Dominant traits, which scientists always write out with a capital letter, are like someone shouting through a giant megaphone. Recessive traits, represented by a lowercase letter, are these quiet little whispers. If a megaphone and a whisper happen at the exact same time, you're only ever going to hear the megaphone, right? The dominant trait just completely masks the recessive one. Okay, to see how these megaphones and whispers actually play out in your body, we just need to quickly nail down two genetic terms, homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous simply means your two instruction manuals, your two alleles, say the exact same thing. You either got two loud megaphones or you got two quiet whispers. Heterozygous, on the other hand, means your manuals are giving you two totally different instructions. You have one megaphone and one whisper. Enter Gregor Mendel. You probably know him as the father of genetics. He actually figured all of this out by meticulously studying pea plants. When Mendel took a purely tall plant, meaning it had two tall megaphones, and crossed it with a purely short dwarf plant, which had two short whispers, the offspring got one allele from each parent. That made them entirely heterozygous. But look at the result. Every single one of the offspring was tall. The tall megaphone completely overpowered the short whisper. And boom, that is Mendel's law of dominance in action. So what happens when those heterozygous plants, the ones holding one megaphone and one whisper, go on to have their own little plant babies? Well, they don't pass on both of their traits. This perfectly demonstrates Mendel's law of segregation. Think of this like dealing cards in a game. Each parent holds two cards in their hand, but they only get to deal one card to their offspring. It's a completely random draw which creates a totally unique combination every single time reproduction happens. Let's look at the results of that genetic card game between two heterozygous parents. We'll use yellow and green peas this time. The math here is actually beautiful. Because yellow is that loud, dominant megaphone, the random draw is going to give you 3 yellow peas for every 1 green pea. That green trait, the recessive whisper, only physically shows up about 1 in 4 times. Specifically, it only happens when both parents happen to deal their recessive card at the exact same time. Underneath it all, the genetic ratio breaks down to exactly 1 homozygous dominant, 2 heterozygous, and 1 homozygous recessive, a 1:2:1 ratio.
Okay, let's level this up just a bit and look at the law of independent assortment. The easiest way to think about this is like ordering from a menu at a restaurant. Just because you order a burger doesn't mean you automatically have to get fries, right? Well, traits are passed on completely independently of each other too. Take cows, for example. Inheriting a solid coat color doesn't force that cow to also inherit a black coat. Solid or spotted, black or brown, these traits are being dealt out of completely separate decks of cards.
Now, if you cross two cow parents that are heterozygous for both of those traits on the menu, you get this big, kind of intimidating 16-square chart of possibilities. But honestly, don't let it freak you out. The results always reliably break down into this very specific 9:3:3:1 ratio. Out of 16 possibilities, you're going to get 9 solid black cows, which rock both dominant traits, 3 solid brown cows, 3 spotted black cows, and just 1 spotted brown cow who somehow managed to order that rare double recessive whisper combo from the genetic menu.
All right, let's bring this right back to you.
The exact same rules we just saw in peas and cows, they apply perfectly to your own body. Take a second and look at this list. Which of these traits did you order from your parents' menu? Do you have dimples? What about a widow's peak? Can you roll your tongue? These physical characteristics aren't just random. They are the direct results of the genetic alleles you were dealt.
Let's actually zoom in on one specific human trait to see this in action. Your earlobes. Some people have free earlobes, meaning they kind of hang down a bit from the side of the head. Other people have attached earlobes, which connect right to the side of the head. Free earlobes are the dominant megaphone. Attached earlobes are the recessive whisper. It's just brilliant how Mendel's foundational rules literally shape our very faces.
And just to really lock in how this works under the hood, let's look at the genetic symbols using dimples as an example. Scientists use a capital D for the dominant dimple trait and a lowercase d for the recessive lack of dimples. If your genes are capital D, or even capital D, lowercase d, you've got dimples. Remember, having just one single dominant megaphone is enough to express that trait, regardless of whether you're homozygous or heterozygous. The absolute only way you have 0 dimples is if you inherited 2 recessive lowercase d's, 2 whispers.
Which brings us to a really honestly mind-blowing conclusion. Because dominant traits can completely overpower and hide recessive ones, you could be carrying all sorts of recessive alleles without even realizing it. So I'll leave you with this. What invisible recessive whispers are hiding in your genetic hand of cards right now? What hidden traits are just sitting there in your instruction manual waiting to be dealt to the next generation? It's a truly amazing blueprint, and you're walking around with it right now. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions and definitely keep exploring.